Preparing for the Panama Canal trip that I'm actually on now as I record this, I read a book by Dr. Lou Dee called Cruising Coast to Coast Through the Panama Canal. He said in that book I was making a really big mistake with what I'd booked, which of course got me worried. But more importantly, it got me thinking about other mistakes I've seen people make on past Panama Canal trips that I've been on. So I want to talk to you about the do's and don'ts because I know that most people will only do the Panama Canal once in their lifetime. So I want to help make it perfect. If you're new here, by the way, welcome aboard. I'm Gary Bembridge, and it's my goal to make it fun and easy to discover, plan, and enjoy unforgettable cruise vacations, and in this case, on the Panama Canal. The first big mistake is thinking that it is a canal, despite its name. The other iconic canal, the Suez Canal, is one long, continuous sea level canal. The Panama Canal is not at all. To pass the 50 miles from one side of Panama to the other side of Panama, ships are first raised up 85 feet, that's 26 meters, in a series of 3 locks. They then sail through a vast man-made Gatun lake and then along a long channel cut into the countryside known as the Calibra or the Galliard cut, before then being lowered back to sea level by another 3 locks. The whole process, by the way, takes between 8 and 10 hours, so a whole day. There's also more than one Panama Canal. Now, knowing this is important, as I will explain shortly. The original canal was opened in 1914. It was built by the US after a big, massive failed attempt by the French. However, as only around 1/3 of all ships can actually pass through the old canal, a new canal was opened in 2016, which can take bigger ships. It basically doubled the capacity of the ships able to pass through the canal system, and it enables many of the big mega container ships and the big cruise mega ships to now use the Panama Canal. It's really key to understand that you will not be going through a canal, but through a whole system. Again, as you will see, this becomes important to avoid further mistakes and a couple of other do's and don'ts. Now, people I've met who've been underwhelmed with the Panama Canal cruise made a key mistake, in my view, of choosing the wrong canal. In my view, the old 1914 canal is the canal process to go through. It's the most dramatic, visually interesting, and it has an incredible story to discover. It has many, many differences to the new modern 2016 one. On the original canal, if you go from the Panama to the Caribbean side, as I did on this trip now, you first go up through the 2-tier Miraflores locks, about a mile through the Miraflores Lake to a 1-tier Pedro Miguel lock. We then sailed through the man-made Calibra cut, also as I mentioned earlier known as the Galliard cut, then out into the vast Gatun Lake. Now the Gatun Lake supplies the water for the locks. Then we went down the impressive 3-tiered Gatun locks to the Caribbean Sea. And of course, if you're doing the other way, you do it in reverse. On the new canal going the same way, Panama to Colon, the wider and longer 3-tier Cocali locks take ships up. They use the same cut, the same lake, and the equally larger Agua Clara locks take you down on the other side to the Caribbean Sea. And again, vice versa if you're going the other way. You can see the entrance, by the way, to the new locks when you're using the old system, because the ships, basically sail through the same part and you get to see the entrances and the exits. But why is the old canal a better experience? Well, first, the cruise ships fit very snugly into those locks with often as little as a foot on each side. Secondly, they still use the old lock gates that swing open. And thirdly, they use these amazing mechanical mules which are attached to the ship to keep the ship centered, and they are fascinating. By the way, the mules don't pull the ship through, they just keep the ships from smashing into the lock walls. On the new canal, it's very wide, there's lots of space. Tugboats help steer the ships. They have modern gates that slide in and out. The old canal is definitely the more dramatic, and in my view, it's the one that you absolutely should do. However, even if you choose the right canal, the old one, in my view, there's another big mistake I see people making around how they do it. And so I have a whole bunch of do's and don'ts around that. There are around 250 cruise ships that pass through the Panama Canal every single year. So you need to understand which is the best for you, because there are different options and they are designed, in my view, for different types of travelers. There are 3 main options. I've done all 3 of them, and I've got some very clear thoughts on what their strengths are and who I think they're best for. So who should do them and who shouldn't do them. The first and the most obvious one is a full transit. You can go either from the Caribbean Sea, from Colon to the Pacific side, Panama City, or the other way around, Panama City to Colon. This is one for the bucket list, the travel geek, or cruisers like me who want to see every single detail and be able to say they've done the full iconic Panama Canal transit. You also, by the way, need time because many of these trips are 10 to 14-day cruises to do that. These include ships repositioning at the start and end of the Alaska season when they're heading then either to be based in the Caribbean or they're heading even further to Europe. They pass through the Panama Canal to and from Alaska, basically. There are also ships on world voyages. For example, the very first time I did it was on Queen Victoria. It was on a world voyage and it passed through the Panama Canal as part of its circumnavigation of the globe. Then there are cruises specifically designed with the Panama Canal as its feature. And so many of these cruises will go from Los Angeles to Miami, or as I did on Oceania Marina, actually from Panama City to Miami, and of course, vice versa. Now, the second option is if you just want to get a taste of the Panama Canal and you mostly want to do more of a Caribbean, Southern Western Caribbean cruise, you can do a partial transit cruise out of Florida. I did one of these on Holland America Zaandam. Now these go from the Caribbean side of the Panama Canal up through the Gatun Lakes, they turn around in the Gatun Lake and they come back down. Now these usually offer excursions. So you can tender off in the lake and you then go on various excursions and you meet the ship back in Colon once it's gone back down the Gatun Locks. So while you're not going to have the full experience, it works for travelers who are not bothered about seeing the whole Panama Canal or perhaps want to see a bit of the Panama Canal and more of Panama. The excursions offered usually include the Gamboa aerial tramway. It's a visit to the rainforest, fantastic. Small boat trips on the Gatun Lake to see the islands where you can see monkeys, birds, crocodiles, or even to take the historic train ride to Panama City. But if anyone in your group actually wants more of the canal, there are other options. You can go on canal operation tours to either the new Agua Clara lock system or to the Miraflores Visitor Center and watch ships passing through the old locks. Or you can actually complete the transit on a small tourist boat, which will take you through the rest of the Panama Canal, and you then get a coach back to the ship which waits, as I mentioned earlier, in Colon for all the different excursions. Now these trips, though, are also around about 10 days long. Now the third option, which I did on Oceania Insignia and is a much shorter option, is a 7-night Western Caribbean cruise that calls into Colon. From Colon, those very same excursions I mentioned were available. So it's great if you have limited time for your trip, or perhaps only one or two of you on your party wants to actually see and experience the Panama Canal, because those lot can go off on the Panama Canal excursion, the others can head to the rainforest or wherever. However, even within these three key options, there's another do and don't that I see people making mistakes on. And that's one I discovered on my most recent trip, and that's around the ship that you choose to do it on. You want to go on a ship which has many, many areas and space to do viewings of the Panama Canal. When I did the Queen Victoria full transit, in fact the Holland America Zaandam partial transit, they opened the bow of the ship so you could get out really close to the locks and see it really, really close up. Both also have full promenade decks on deck 5 or deck 6, so you can then get really close. You can watch the mules and the operations really close up. You could also, of course, go to the rear of the ship, high up, and so on. However, on Oceania Marina, there were much fewer places to view it because they don't have a full promenade deck. The bow wasn't open because that was being used for the various canal operations. Now, I was actually lucky enough to be invited to watch from a suite balcony overlooking the bow by a guest, but there was much fewer opportunities to see the canal. So before booking, think about how you want to view the canal. If you want to get up close, choose a ship where you know you're going to be able to do that. Now, how do you know which will let you do that? I've already mentioned some of the lines that do it, but ask your travel agent, or even better, check by asking the question on Cruise Critic in the group for the cruise line you're considering. Ask with past passengers what were the viewing options on your particular ship. Now, once you've got the right canal and the right ship, there are a few other mistakes still, believe it or not, that you could make. So here's a couple more do's and don'ts. There are things you need to do before you go, once you're on board, and on the very day of the transit. There are actually three things that I recommend you do before you go, really important ones. First of all, learn about the history and the politics of the canal. It's fascinating. And to be honest, a little bit disturbing. You'll discover things like 22,000 people died in the failed French attempt before the Americans actually finished building it. The political lengths the US went to in order to be able to make and build the Panama Canal is quite remarkable. The book most people rely on is David McCulloch's Pathway Between the Seas, the creation of the Panama Canal. The second thing is packing for the transit. You're going to be outside for a long time. It's hot, it's sticky, and you can get very sunburned and dehydrated. So take a really good hat with a nice brim all the way around, good sunglasses, good sunscreen, and clothes that are going to be suitable for a hot, humid, sweaty day, and probably comfy shoes because you're going to be walking around a lot. Now, I made the mistake, for example, of not putting enough sunscreen on the back of my neck. I got really burnt on the back of my neck and in sort of various parts of my arms where I missed the sunscreen. But it's really important, be prepared. Also, if you think you're going to take lots of photos or videos, pack accordingly. If you've got a new camera or a new phone, make sure you know how to use it. On all my trips, I've seen people with new cameras and phones struggling to take the pictures they wanted to take. Now, once on board, go to all the ship talks and briefings. They will explain how the day is going to work, really important, what areas will be opened, really important, and then the time schedule for the day of when you will be in the different locks. Now, this helps to plan the day because you can figure out when you're going to have lunch, when you're going to rest, or whatever. On the day, if you can be in the front of the ship, if the bow is open, get there early in the morning. It turns into a bit of a bun fight. Everyone wants to be there. They want to be in front. The good news is over the course of the day, numbers reduce, the novelty diminishes, and it's easier to get a good position at short notice. But if you want to be in the front, get up early and get right out there and claim your spot. Now, during the transit, I recommend move around the ship. See some of the locks closing, watch them from different angles, watch them from the rear of the ship. When you go through the cut and the lake, don't worry about being out on deck. It's interesting, it's not fascinating. So that's the downtime when you can rest and eat. So that's what I said, understand the schedule for the day. Make sure you really understand that. The one thing that you do not need to worry about as a mistake, as a do and a don't, is the one that I was warned about in that book by Dr. Lou Deek. He said direction. He said the best way to go was from the Caribbean side through to the Panama side, not the way that I was going. I don't think that's true. Whichever side you go is incredible. If you want to see in more depth what it's like to transit the Panama Canal and all the stages, take a look at this video where you'll see what amazed me most about the transit. See you over there.